There is a trap surrounding modern men that most of them never see. It does not look like a prison. It does not feel like oppression. In fact, it often feels like comfort, entertainment, and freedom. Yet beneath that comfortable surface lies one of the most effective systems of control ever created. A system so subtle that the man caught inside it believes he is acting entirely on his own will. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this mechanism long before smartphones, algorithms, or streaming platforms existed. When he studied power in the courts of Florence, he noticed that the most reliable way to weaken a population was not through violence or fear. Those methods created resistance. Instead, the true strategist offered pleasure. Give a man comfort, and he relaxes. Give him endless stimulation, and he forgets discipline. Give him effortless gratification, and eventually he abandons ambition entirely. Machiavelli observed that the easiest man to control was not the one who was afraid, it was the one who was satisfied. The modern world has perfected this principle. The man living today wakes up surrounded by invisible machinery designed to capture his attention and convert his impulses into consumption. Every screen is optimized to stimulate dopamine. Every feed is engineered to keep him scrolling. Every notification promises another tiny reward for almost no effort. The system is elegant in its simplicity. It does not force the man to obey. It trains him to want exactly what weakens him. At first, nothing seems wrong. The habits feel harmless. A few minutes of distraction before bed, a quick video to relax after work, a little entertainment to escape stress. But what most men never realize is that every one of these small decisions is shaping the architecture of their motivation. Inside the brain exists a reward system built around a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is not simply the chemical of pleasure, it is the chemical of pursuit. It tells your brain that something is worth chasing, worth working for, worth sacrificing comfort to obtain. For thousands of years, this system evolved to push men toward difficult goals. Hunting required effort, building a tribe required effort, creating status required effort, reproduction required effort. Every meaningful reward was located on the far side of discipline. But the modern environment has rewired that ancient system. It offers dopamine without struggle, desire without risk, pleasure without achievement. And when the brain learns that the fastest path to reward requires no effort, something dangerous happens. Ambition begins to fade. The goals that once felt exciting begin to feel distant. The projects that once sparked energy begin to feel exhausting. The man still believes he wants success, strength, and respect, but the neurochemical engine that drives pursuit has been quietly sabotaged. He wakes up tired without understanding why. He struggles to focus for long periods. He begins things with enthusiasm and abandons them days later. The tragedy is that he does not feel broken, he simply feels bored. Machiavelli described this exact dynamic using the language of politics. When a society becomes addicted to comfort, he wrote, it does not collapse suddenly, it decays slowly from within. The structure appears intact on the outside, while the internal discipline that once sustained it dissolves quietly. The same process occurs inside the individual man. From the outside, everything may appear normal. He still works, still talks, still moves through daily life. But internally, the architecture of motivation has weakened. His mind has been trained to chase the easiest possible reward. Neuroscience has begun mapping this with disturbing clarity. Studies have shown that men exposed to constant high-intensity digital stimulation experience reduced sensitivity in the brain's reward centers. In simple terms, the more artificial pleasure the brain consumes, the harder it becomes to feel excited by ordinary life. The baseline for stimulation keeps rising. Conversations feel less engaging. Real relationships feel slower and more demanding. Long-term goals feel frustrating compared to instant gratification.
The man becomes conditioned to seek microbursts of pleasure instead of sustained accomplishment. And once that pattern settles into the brain, it begins affecting something deeper than motivation. It begins affecting presence. Presence is one of the most powerful and least understood qualities in human interaction. It is the invisible signal that some men carry when they walk into a room, the quiet gravity that makes others pay attention even when the man is silent. Presence does not come from words. It does not come from clothing. It does not come from memorized confidence techniques. Presence comes from internal stability. It comes from a nervous system that is not constantly chasing stimulation. It comes from a mind capable of holding tension, uncertainty, and delayed gratification without collapsing into distraction. The modern pleasure trap erodes exactly that capacity. A man conditioned to constant stimulation becomes restless in silence. He struggles to sit still during moments of uncertainty. His attention jumps rapidly between distractions. And these subtle signals leak into every interaction he has. His eye contact breaks too quickly. His voice carries hidden tension. His body language reveals impatience. These signals are tiny, but the human brain is extremely good at detecting them. Evolutionary psychology has wired us to evaluate others through micro-behaviors. We read posture, tone, movement, and emotional stability in fractions of a second. Women, in particular, are extraordinarily sensitive to cues of emotional regulation in men. Research in evolutionary psychology has repeatedly shown that female attraction is strongly influenced by signals of self-governance. The man who appears calm, grounded, and internally directed activates a completely different response than the man whose energy feels scattered or reactive. This evaluation happens long before conversation begins. It is not a conscious decision, it is instinct. The man whose nervous system is constantly seeking quick pleasure often does not realize how much that instability alters his presence. He believes attraction is about looks, wealth, or clever conversation, but the deeper signal is energetic. A man who governs his impulses carries a certain stillness. His movements slow, his voice deepens, his attention remains steady. He does not appear desperate for stimulation or validation, and that stability communicates something powerful: self-command. Machiavelli considered self-command the foundation of all real power. A prince who could not control his own impulses, he argued, would eventually be controlled by someone else who could. The same rule applies to the modern man. The person who cannot regulate his own desires becomes vulnerable to systems designed to exploit them, and those systems are everywhere. Algorithms that feed endless novelty, platforms that reward constant scrolling, content designed to spike dopamine again and again. The man inside this environment begins living in a state of perpetual stimulation. Yet paradoxically, the more stimulation he consumes, the less alive he feels. The colors fade. The hunger for achievement weakens. The quiet confidence that once emerged from discipline begins to disappear. And he fills that emptiness the only way his rewired brain knows, with more of the same stimulation that created it. This is the pleasure trap Machiavelli warned about centuries ago.
The man who begins to understand the pleasure trap eventually reaches a realization that is both disturbing and liberating. The problem was never simply the habit itself. The deeper problem is what that habit trains the mind to become. A mind trained for immediate reward loses its tolerance for friction, and friction is the birthplace of everything valuable in a man's life. Think about the qualities that define the men who shape the world around them, the entrepreneurs who build companies, the leaders who command respect, the athletes who dominate their discipline, the thinkers whose ideas outlive them. Every one of those achievements is born from the ability to tolerate discomfort for long periods of time. Focus requires discomfort. Training requires discomfort. Leadership requires discomfort. Building anything meaningful requires the willingness to sit with tension that offers no instant reward. Machiavelli understood this principle through his observation of power. When he studied great leaders and generals, he noticed that their defining trait was not intelligence or charisma. Many intelligent men failed. Many charismatic men collapsed when circumstances turned against them. The difference was endurance. The great leaders could remain steady when others grew impatient. They could delay gratification when others rushed toward pleasure. They could sit inside uncertainty without surrendering to panic or distraction. In other words, they governed themselves. The modern pleasure trap attacks exactly that capacity. When a man trains his brain to expect instant stimulation, he loses the psychological muscles required for patience. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Long-term projects become exhausting. Waiting becomes intolerable. And without patience, discipline becomes nearly impossible. The result is a strange paradox that defines much of modern life. Men have access to more information, more opportunity, and more technological power than any generation before them, yet many feel weaker, more distracted, and less motivated than their grandfathers who lived in far harsher conditions. The reason is not mystery. Their environment rewards impulse instead of discipline. Every notification promises a quick hit of novelty. Every algorithm delivers entertainment faster than the brain can process it. The entire digital ecosystem is built around maximizing engagement, which means maximizing stimulation. And stimulation without effort gradually erodes the man's ability to generate his own momentum. He becomes dependent on external triggers. If something exciting appears on his screen, his brain activates. If the stimulation disappears, his motivation collapses. The ancient philosophers would recognize this pattern immediately. Long before neuroscience mapped the dopamine system, thinkers like the Stoics and Machiavelli warned about the danger of uncontrolled appetite. They understood that freedom does not come from satisfying every desire. Freedom comes from choosing which desires deserve your energy. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn how to discipline both himself and those he governs, but he always emphasized that the first battle occurs internally. The man who cannot govern his own impulses will never govern anything else successfully. This is not a moral statement, it is a strategic one. Self-governance creates leverage. A man who can resist short-term temptation becomes capable of long-term strategy. While others chase immediate pleasure, he is building momentum toward goals that compound over years, and that difference becomes visible. It becomes visible in his energy, in the way he carries himself, in the calm patience with which he navigates uncertainty. When he enters a room, people sense something unusual about him, even if they cannot explain what it is. His attention is not scattered. His mind is not constantly searching for stimulation. He appears present. Presence is a rare quality in a world of distraction. Most conversations today occur between two people whose minds are half occupied by their phones, their notifications, or the next piece of content waiting to be consumed. The man who is fully present immediately stands out. He listens without impatience. He speaks without rushing. He observes before reacting. This kind of presence generates an almost magnetic effect because it signals something very simple yet very powerful. This man is in control of himself. Women respond strongly to this signal because emotional stability has always been one of the most important indicators of leadership potential in evolutionary psychology. The male who appears grounded, patient, and internally directed communicates the ability to navigate unpredictable environments without collapsing into panic. Again, this evaluation occurs below conscious awareness. No checklist is being consulted. No deliberate calculation takes place. The brain simply notices the difference between reactive energy and composed energy. The reactive man feels restless. His attention jumps quickly. His voice may carry subtle urgency, as if he is constantly seeking approval or stimulation. The composed man feels steady. His responses are slower. His posture communicates patience rather than hunger. And patience is one of the strongest signals of power. Machiavelli often warned princes that impatience is the enemy of strategy. A ruler who reacts emotionally to every provocation reveals his weaknesses to his enemies. The ruler who remains calm forces others to reveal theirs. In the same way, the man who can sit comfortably with tension becomes difficult to manipulate. He does not rush to fill silence with nervous conversation. He does not chase validation when attention fluctuates. He simply observes. Observation creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence, and confidence that emerges from genuine internal stability cannot be easily imitated. This is why attempts to fake confidence rarely succeed. A rehearsed posture or memorized lines might impress someone briefly, but subtle signals eventually expose the underlying nervousness. Real confidence grows from the knowledge that your mind is not controlled by impulses you cannot regulate. The man who governs his desires knows something powerful about himself. He knows that discomfort will not defeat him. He knows that boredom will not destroy his focus. He knows that silence does not threaten his identity. These realizations produce a kind of quiet authority that others instinctively recognize. Machiavelli wrote that people judge more by appearances than by reality, because appearances are easier to observe. Yet he also understood that appearances eventually reveal underlying truth. A man can perform strength for a short period of time, but if his internal discipline is weak, that weakness will eventually appear in his decisions, his reactions, and his relationships. The opposite is also true. A man who builds genuine internal discipline does not need to advertise it. His behavior reveals it naturally. He does not panic when circumstances become uncertain. He does not chase approval from every person he encounters. He does not collapse emotionally when attention fluctuates. Instead, he continues moving toward his goals with the same steady momentum regardless of temporary distractions. This steadiness creates respect, and respect is often the foundation of attraction, influence, and leadership. The modern pleasure trap attempts to replace this steady momentum with endless distraction. It trains men to move constantly between small bursts of stimulation, rather than committing deeply to anything meaningful. But once a man recognizes the pattern, he gains an advantage that most people never develop. Awareness breaks the illusion. The next time the impulse to seek easy gratification appears, he can observe it rather than obey it. He can recognize that the craving is not simply a desire for pleasure. It is a neurological signal asking for stimulation, and that stimulation can be redirected. Physical training can produce powerful dopamine release while strengthening the body. Creative work can generate intense focus that activates the brain's reward circuits. Real social connection produces deeper and more sustainable satisfaction than artificial stimulation ever can. Each of these alternatives rebuilds the brain's sensitivity to effort-based reward. Over time, the man who consistently chooses effort over easy stimulation begins to notice something remarkable. Life becomes vivid again. Goals feel exciting rather than exhausting. Conversations feel engaging rather than tedious. Motivation begins to return not because the man forced it through willpower, but because his brain has been retrained to value meaningful reward. This transformation does not happen overnight. The modern pleasure trap is powerful precisely because it operates slowly and invisibly. But the same principle that created the trap can reverse